Business is definitely starting right now with Nigel Farage, the UKIP leader, who joins me in the studio. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well,
it's your kingdom, I hear, from the
yes,
intro.
I'm not convinced about kingdom because I'm holding out for Empress, Nigel. I really am. King, Queen's rubbish. Now, look, 3 months today to the EU referendum. It's questionable whether even people like me and you... Now, let's be honest, this isn't the BBC, I could be honest. I'm a staunch Eurosceptic, as you are. Absolutely support that. It doesn't necessarily mean you and I agree on everything. Let's be certain about that. But we've had many off-air rows, I'm sure people will gather. But do you think that the people of Britain are ready for another 3 months of this campaign?
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a very, very long time. The referendum was announced. I think Cameron was really shocked. He was shocked about Boris. He was shocked about Michael Gove. Shocked that 140 of his own... his party's split down the middle. So he decided to come out with this sort of, literally firing every bullet he had. Everything he had, he was thrown at this in the first few weeks. And so what could have been a gentle intro has actually started off at a frenetic pace. I worry that people will get bored if it goes on and on and on. And I particularly think, I have to say this, that the negativity that we hear from Cameron, from Clegg, from Mandelson, from all the people on the front line of the Remain campaign, they keep telling us the sky will fall in. We can't possibly cope on our own. And I think that's going to bore people. And you know what? I think that we will warn people about open borders and terrorism and things like that. But basically, our message is the sunny, optimistic one, which is that we can govern ourselves, trade with the world. And I think in a very long campaign, us having optimism will help us.
But there is a big elephant in the room today after the Brussels attacks, which we're talking about later and spent much of yesterday talking about. And there have been some claims made, people saying, look, the Brussels attacks proves that Britain is not safer in Europe. Now, the reaction to that has been, that's tasteless, that's tacky. I've seen some tweets from you today about that. We had a guest on yesterday mentioning that. Is it just tacky? Is it political game playing to use the deaths of more than 30 people in that way for a political campaign?
Well, that's what the pro-EU side have done. They've all done it. Cameron has said this must make us consolidate our European values. Hollande said this is an attack on the whole of the European Union. And we will hear next week in Brussels calls for deeper integration. The closer we are together, the less the chance there is of this sort of thing happening. So the other side politicise every single event. They politicise Holocaust Day. They politicise the 11th of November. They politicise everything in the name of building their European state with their wretched flag and anthem that most of us don't want. Our side of the argument, Paris was a shock. It was a big shock. And I wasn't criticised. Nobody was criticised. We basically said nothing for 48 hours. But Brussels, what happened yesterday, and it was awful. And undoubtedly, I will know some of those people who were either killed or injured.
Because, of course, one of the metro station that was attacked just half a kilometre from the European Parliament building.
From the European Parliament, and I've worked there for years. I'm bound to know some of those people. But the one thing it wasn't yesterday was a shock. We've been expecting it for months. We know that Brussels, frankly, is now the Jihadi capital of Europe. We know there is a complete state of lawlessness in that city. And I think, from our point of view, it is utterly and entirely justifiable to repeat what I said the week after Paris, namely that this Schengen, this free movement zone, is a lovely idea when everything's hunky-dory. But in reality, the free movement of people has become the free movement of terrorists, criminal gangs and Kalashnikovs.
But if these are Belgians born and bred, in the same way that, the Paris attacks, yes, they were French and they were also Belgian. 7/7, they were British born and bred. Again and again, these attacks are carried out. Lee Rigby, British born and bred. These people aren't coming from over there, from elsewhere. They're in our countries right now. So what's that got to do with Schengen?
There are two distinct problems here. One is the problem we have already, which is a failure of politicians, a failure of prime ministers, a failure of home secretaries. We've had an open-door immigration policy. We've allowed too many people in too quickly. They haven't integrated. We've effectively seen ghettos developing in some of our cities in Britain and Brussels and Paris and elsewhere. And it's in that environment of immigrant communities not doing well that I'm afraid this new jihadist mentality has taken hold. That's problem number one. So you're quite right. We have a problem anyway. But why would you compound that problem? As Chancellor Merkel did last year, by saying to countless millions, please come, we can accommodate you. The boss of Europol said just 2 weeks ago, he thinks that up to 5,000 jihadi terrorists have now come into Europe in the course of the last 18 months posing as migrants. So why would you add to a problem that you've already got? And I'll say a third thing, which is this. You know, those young men that we saw outside Cologne train station on New Year's Eve, you know, sexually molesting women in open public view, whether it's that problem, whether it's the bombing problem. Remember, all of those people that came into Germany last year, within a few short years, will have German passports, namely EU passports, and be able to come to this country. And I think plain common sense tells you that we can't completely isolate or insulate ourselves from terrorist risk, but we can reduce it